Hello everyone, and welcome back to another book review. Today I'm going to be reviewing Return to My Trees, Notes from the Welsh Woodlands by Matthew Yeomans. This is what the cover looks like, and in this book the author decides to take a 300-mile walk across the country of Wales. But first of all, if you're new here, I post new book reviews almost every single day on both fiction and nonfiction books, so if you want to get book reviews every single day and some reading inspiration, feel free to stick around. Back to reviewing Return to My Woods. This is what the cover looks like, as already mentioned. It's not too long, it's a little over 200 pages. Yeah, 230 pages, so it doesn't take too long to read. The only thing I wish I had was an audiobook, actually. I would have liked to listen to an audiobook along. There were a lot of unfamiliar Welsh names in this book that I had to try to tackle the pronunciation of, and my pronunciation of Welsh is weak, to say the least. So it did take a little bit longer than I would normally expect a 230-page book to take, but it's not too long of a book to tackle. The premise of this book is quite straightforward. The Welsh government has announced that they would like to build some sort of national forest in which they're going to link existing forests together. The author is looking for a project. This is during the 2020 pandemic, so he decides he wants to walk this kind of proposed pathway or a linking of these forests, which is about 300 miles through the country of Wales. This will be done in various sections, so he's not doing what we would consider like a through hike, I guess, where you would put all your supplies on your back and just walk all the way through. I'm thinking of people who do really long trails here in the US who kind of do everything all at once. He does this in chunks and sections. He does some of these hikes with friends. He gets friends from his university days or just friends that he knows to go on sections of the walks with him, but he also does other sections by himself. He compiles his thoughts that he has while going on these walks, and he puts them in this book, which is then in chronological order as he goes through the various stages of the walk. There is a map at the beginning which helpfully shows the path that he took with all of the places listed, so you can kind of follow along, because each chapter will tell you where he's walking to and from, so you can reference the map at the beginning. Something that the author runs into right away is there's no actual complete path. It's not like hiking a trail that's the US, for example, where everything's kind of mapped and laid out, although I'm sure trails that aren't mapped and laid out exist in the US too. He's not hiking an already existing trail, he's hiking maybe a proposed trail, so he's having to link up these sections of trail together. So maybe there's some trail in this woods and some trail in this woods, and he needs to link the two together through whatever means he can find necessary through maps and gadgets. So he's doing his best to piece together a way to walk through the Welsh countryside and appreciate the beauty. On his walks, he passes a lot of things with historical importance. He's having to ponder things like Welsh history and mythology, things that have kind of made this origin and this national identity of Wales. He also is considering things like the impact that industrialization had on Wales and some of the ugly landscapes that exist or ugly scars that exist in the landscape because of industrialization. So he's seeing this firsthand on his walk. He's also thinking about things that may have to change in the future in order to prevent, for example, harsh impacts from farming. Maybe farming could be made better, or things that may need to change in the future to just keep things sustainable and make sure that they're not ruining or no one's ruining the environment or being too hard or taking too much of a burden on the environment. So he's also mixing in these ponderings that he has while he's walking around in the woods and basically following this 300-mile-ish journey through Wales. I believe it was 300 miles. I keep saying that with confidence because that's the number that comes to mind. So this book was enjoyable. I do have to say that. Again, my first thing that I thought when reading this was I wish I had an audiobook to make sure that I was hearing some of these places pronounced correctly. One thing that I had to get used to right away was the scale. So I live in the United States, which is a much bigger country than Wales. So the scale of things like national forests, like wildlife refuges, are much bigger here in the US. And sometimes when I would hear sizes, I would think, well, that's not too big, or that's kind of small. And the author had mentioned how large or how impressive it was. And I have to remember that I'm thinking of a place that is much smaller. The state that I live in the United States is bigger than the country of Wales. So it's unfair to compare the two. So definitely getting the scale right is something that I had to do right away and think I'm working with a much smaller scale than maybe what I'm used to. Think more state size is what I tried to do in my head, because otherwise I'm comparing maybe trails like thousands and thousands of miles here in the US to the 300-mile walk, and I'm thinking, but I shouldn't be comparing the two because both of them are worthwhile and worth doing, and they're just different places with different geographies. So I can't compare the two, but I do need to mentally reduce my scale when thinking about places in Europe. That's something I just have to do. Overall, again, enjoyable. I think the author has a sense of humor which pokes through. I think the author's humor kind of keeps the story interesting when I think we're getting too deep into the ponderings about maybe how bad things could get, or some of the horrors that were enacted, or just some strangeness of the Middle Ages. The author's humor comes through when he's talking about things that he experiences on the walks or thoughts he had. I think some of the funnier parts are the more relatable parts. It's not like he's a hardened hiker who's ready to go and everything goes perfectly. He very frequently gets lost. I think this is especially due to the fact that there's not a unified path for him to walk on this trip. He's kind of inventing his own. So he's frequently crossing wind farms that he shouldn't be crossing and just turning off into places. The number of times I saw the sentence that he's going to take a shortcut. Listen, I know all about shortcuts. I have wound up in many random fields in the woods here in the US because I took a shortcut that didn't go anywhere. So I'm very wary of shortcuts. Also, once I was letting someone else direct me when I was on a trip to Alaska, and their shortcut led me to my rental car being in the middle of a gravel pit. So I don't trust shortcuts. So every time I heard the author say he's taking a shortcut, I was like, we're gonna get lost, aren't we? Or, you're gonna be walking up a hill that doesn't have a path, are you? But I think that kind of makes it relatable because most people have been there, and hearing someone who had the perfect walk where nothing went wrong genuinely wouldn't be that interesting, or it wouldn't be as interesting, I should say. It wouldn't be as interesting even if he did cover the things like the impact of industrialization and Welsh mythology, folklore, history. Just having that human aspect of, hey, I messed up and I went up a hill that didn't have a path and then I was lost, just kind of makes it humorous and relatable. Something that I wish the author had done, or maybe this was a stylistic choice, I'm not sure, maybe it can't be done. We do have this map here at the beginning, but I wish the author had provided at the beginning of each chapter a zoomed in section from this map, like at the top, showing where he was going to be walking, because I did a lot of flipping back and forth and I just felt like that was a small improvement that could have been done to keep the book flowing and prevent as much flipping back and forth. And also that I could very clearly see where we were going to be hiking between and the landmarks that were relevant right there at the start of the chapter, and remember them all for this chapter. So I feel like that just would have been a little nice addition that I would have liked to have seen, but the book's published, there's nothing that can be done now. Overall, this was quite an enjoyable read. It's just some man's ramblings walking through the Welsh woods, but I feel like it's relatable whether or not you've ever been to Wales or not. I have not been to Wales yet, but I feel like it's relatable to all of us. It kind of covers all things that all of us have to think of with regard to nature, the history, the folklore that's associated with the region that we live in or that we're hiking in, the impact that humans have made on the environment, and decisions and changes that are going to be made on the environment going forward. Those are all universal themes. You don't have to be in Wales to appreciate and know it. And the human touch of the author's humor and the experiences and situations he puts himself in are just enjoyable and fun to read. So if you're looking for a book that hits any of the things that I've talked about, then Return to My Trees might be the book for you to check out. If you have any thoughts, comments, would like to share anything, please put it in the comment section below. I love to receive comments. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest